Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So now, let's begin today's story journey. Before falling asleep, Elaine arrogantly informed me, "This will be the last time I sleep with you. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will speak with you about our divorce." I closed my eyes and touched the voice recorder in my pocket, where her conversation with Gareth in the garage last night was clearly recorded. I listened to Elaine's steady breathing beside me, while unquenchable anger churned inside me. As a Dutch immigrant running a greenhouse flower business in America, I once believed our marriage was as solid as rock. Elaine worked at the local tourism bureau, and together we built a new life on this land. The first few years, everything was as beautiful as tulips blooming in Dutch springtime. We bought a house in the suburbs and planted flowers together in the backyard on weekends. When my greenhouse business grew steadily, Elaine was always the first to celebrate with me. The turning point came 3 years ago, when Gareth first appeared in our lives. As an import-export trader from Amsterdam, he came to purchase my specialty flowers. We met at an industry exhibition where he dressed elegantly and spoke with distinction. He always spoke with a relaxed confidence, as if wonderful stories from around the world were simply part of his daily life. At that time, I naively introduced him to Elaine, thinking it was normal for my wife to meet my business partners. "Your flowers are very popular in European and Asian markets," Gareth told me, while his eyes occasionally glanced at Elaine standing nearby. "Especially those newly cultivated varieties, they're practically sold out." When Elaine heard this, her eyes sparkled with a brightness I hadn't seen in a long time. "Really? Where are they being sent?" she asked eagerly. In the following months, Gareth's visits became more frequent. At first, I was happy to expand my business network, not noticing the smile that appeared on Elaine's face whenever I mentioned Gareth was coming. She began to take more interest in my work, asking about my international clients and market trends. But now I realize all those questions were to relay information to Gareth. Elaine's change was gradual. She began complaining about the monotony of small-town life and frequently mentioned wanting to see bigger cities or go abroad. "Every day we just work, go home, and sleep, like we're trapped in a cycle that never changes," she said one night during dinner. "Have you ever thought about how big the outside world is?" I was busy managing my expanding greenhouse business, but I wasn't a workaholic. I remembered her birthday and our anniversaries, made time to watch movies she liked, and took her on picnics to the nearby lake on weekends. But none of this seemed to satisfy her anymore. She began attending various training sessions and meetings organized by the Tourism Bureau, sometimes even working overtime on weekends. Her phone suddenly had a new password, and when I asked about it, she said it was a work security requirement. It's not that I didn't notice these changes, but I chose to trust her. Until 6 months ago, when a chance occurrence completely shattered my illusion. That day, Quincy, a Dutch compatriot, called to tell me, "Last night I saw Elaine with Gareth at that new French restaurant in town. They looked very intimate, and I thought you should know." My first reaction was denial, thinking there must be some misunderstanding. But then all those small changes connected in my mind. Her late returns, protection of her phone, and unnatural expressions when mentioning Gareth. A cold anger spread from my chest throughout my body. My hands shook so much I could barely hold the phone. After hanging up, I paced back and forth in the living room, feeling the whole world spinning. I didn't confront her immediately, not out of weakness, but because I needed concrete evidence. I needed to know the truth, not rely on guesses or others' observations. After calming down, I chose a legal way to confirm my suspicions. I installed a recording device in the garage. This was my private property, and installing recording devices is legal, especially for protecting my property and interests. Elaine had recently been making mysterious phone calls in the garage, with the excuse that the signal is better. Indeed, 3 days later in the afternoon, when I told Elaine I had to go to the greenhouse to handle an emergency, the recording device captured her conversation with Gareth. "How's the divorce agreement coming along?" Gareth's voice came through clearly on the recording. "My lawyer says it's going well," Elaine replied, with a coldness in her voice I had never heard before. "He has no idea about our plans. He's so focused on his flowers that he hasn't noticed there's been no love between us for a long time." Hearing this, I felt a sharp pang. The marriage I had worked so hard to maintain for years was so casually dismissed in her eyes. Are you sure you can get cash instead of shares in those greenhouses? Gareth asked, with obvious anxiety in his voice. I'll request a cash division, Elaine said confidently. Anyway, his lawyer will advise him to maintain complete ownership of the greenhouses. Once I have the money, we can start that international trade project you mentioned. Excellent, darling. Gareth's voice softened. I can't wait to get you out of this boring town. Last week I spotted some investment opportunities in Dubai. It's just that I've been having some cash flow issues lately. With your financial support, we could soon be making profits. Do you really think it will succeed? Elaine's voice showed some uncertainty. Of course, said Gareth. I've been in this business for 15 years, just running into some minor troubles recently. You know, post-pandemic supply chain problems affected everyone. But with a new capital injection, we'll soon be back on track and might even expand. You could handle the Asian market, where people are eager for European products. After listening to this recording, it was as if I'd been drenched with a bucket of ice water from head to toe. Not only was it emotional betrayal, but they were also conspiring to use the wealth I had worked so hard to build to fund Gareth's possibly non-existent business opportunities. My hands involuntarily clenched into fists, nails digging deep into my palms. But that pain was nothing compared to the wound in my heart. That night, I sat alone in the darkness of our home study, a glass of whiskey clutched in my hand, constantly replaying that conversation in my mind. Pain, anger, and humiliation intertwined, seeming to tear me apart. The woman I once loved was now planning with another man how to use and betray me. The alcohol numbed my senses, but couldn't erase that feeling of betrayal. The next day, with a headache but clear thoughts, I met with Thornton, the best divorce lawyer in town. After describing the situation in detail, Thornton advised me not to immediately reveal that I knew about the affair. Let's first find out about Garrett's business situation, said Thornton. This is important for developing a property division strategy. Through some contacts in the industry association, I soon discovered that Garrett's trading company was indeed in serious financial trouble. Several suppliers complained that his payments were repeatedly delayed, and there were rumors that he was looking for new investors to solve cash flow problems. All this confirmed the content of the recording. Thornton helped me develop a detailed plan. In the divorce negotiations, we'll insist that partial shares of the greenhouse be the main division asset for Elaine, Thornton explained. We'll emphasize that this is a fair recognition of her support for your business over the years, and that in the long term, the value of these shares will be more stable than cash. During the following weeks, I continued my normal life, as if everything was fine. Each morning I got up and watched Elaine putting on makeup in front of the mirror, thinking she was probably dolling up for Gareth, and felt a twist in my stomach. At night, lying in bed, listening to her even breathing, I couldn't sleep, just staring at the ceiling, imagining scenes of her with Gareth. This torture almost drove me crazy, but I knew I had to endure and conserve my strength for the coming battle. Elaine seemed unaware of anything, becoming increasingly distracted, frequently sending and receiving messages, sometimes even answering calls in the dead of night, believing I was asleep. Every time her phone lit up, I felt as if my heart was being stabbed. The woman who once shared everything with me was now a stranger, a liar. Until that night, when Elaine finally decided to reveal her intentions. When she arrogantly announced the divorce, her face showed a mixture of relief and anticipation, as if she could finally break free from the bonds of this marriage and run toward the exciting life she imagined. And I just silently touched the recorder in my pocket, knowing that the wheels of fate had begun to turn. In that moment, I felt a strange calm, not because the pain had lessened, but because I could finally implement my plan and make those who betrayed me taste the consequences they deserved. The next morning, Elaine's lawyer, Vivian, arrived as agreed. Thornton and I were already waiting in the living room. When Vivian proposed that Elaine wanted a cash division instead of greenhouse shares, Thornton, to her surprise, indicated we were willing to consider giving Elaine part of the greenhouse shares. We believe this is a fair acknowledgement of Elaine's support over the years, said Thornton. Furthermore, the value of the greenhouse has been steadily growing, which represents a good long-term investment for her. Vivian seemed somewhat surprised, but Elaine insisted on wanting cash over the phone. The negotiations continued for several hours and finally ended in disagreement. Meanwhile, through several industry friends, I discreetly passed along certain information. I did not explicitly accuse Gareth of any problems, only subtly suggested they be careful in transactions with certain traders, especially those with cash flow difficulties. These subtle hints circulated quickly in our tight industrial circle. The divorce negotiations lasted 3 months. Each time we went to court and I saw Elaine sitting on the opposite side, I felt a deep estrangement. This woman with whom I had shared 10 years of my life was now my opponent in court. Sometimes she tried to communicate with me through looks, but I always turned away, giving her no opportunity to explain or defend herself. My determination was simple: completely cut all ties with this woman who had betrayed me. Elaine insisted on getting a cash division, while I insisted on offering greenhouse shares. Finally, the judge considered that the greenhouse was an asset built jointly during the marriage, and Elaine certainly had the right to share its value, but not necessarily in the form of cash. The final decision: Elaine received 25% of the greenhouse shares, but without any operational decision-making rights, only rights to dividends. When the verdict was announced, Elaine's expression changed from confusion to anger, finally settling on a deep disappointment. She hurriedly left the court, without even making eye contact with me. I didn't feel the joy of victory I had expected, just a hollow satisfaction. The taste of revenge was not as sweet as I had imagined, but at least I had protected my interests and hadn't allowed that treacherous woman and her lover to squeeze more out of me. By then, Garrett's business troubles had also begun to become evident. Several flower suppliers doing business with him began demanding advance payments. His credit line was reduced, and some long-term partners began distancing themselves from him. Without Elaine's cash injection, his financial situation worsened every day. In the months after the divorce, I completely cut contact with Elaine. I deleted all her contact information, avoided places where she might appear, and focused on rebuilding my own life. During the day, I immersed myself in greenhouse work. At night, I began trying new hobbies: cooking classes, jazz concerts, hiking club. These activities not only filled my time, but also helped me meet new friends, gradually diluting the pain caused by the marriage breakdown. 6 months after the divorce, my life slowly returned to normal. The greenhouse business continued to develop steadily. I even began cultivating a new variety of orchids. Immersed in the world of plants each day, I found a new balance and purpose, until one day I received an unexpected email. The email came from Farah, a woman I had met at a flower exhibition in Amsterdam. She was an editor for a gardening magazine, with a professional understanding and love for flowers. We exchanged cards at that time, but hadn't had much contact until then. "I heard you've cultivated a new variety of orchids," she wrote in her email. "Our magazine is preparing a special issue on innovative breeding, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in an interview." Out of professional respect, I accepted the interview request. A week later, Farah appeared at my greenhouse. She was more radiant than I remembered, with her brown curly hair falling naturally onto her shoulders and her eyes sparkling with a genuine love for flowers. "These orchids are beautiful," she exclaimed upon entering the greenhouse. "Do they have names?" "Not yet," I said. "I'm still observing their growth characteristics." The interview went smoothly. Farah's questions were professional and deep, and our conversation extended from breeding techniques to changes in the global flower market. At the end, she asked if I would show her other areas of the greenhouse. During the visit, we discussed growth environments and care techniques for various plants. Her attention to detail and respect for plants impressed me. Without realizing it, the interview planned for 1 hour extended to 3. "Sorry for taking up so much of your time," she finally said, a bit embarrassed. "I got too involved." "No problem," I replied. "It's nice to meet someone who truly understands and appreciates all this." Farah's interview article was published 2 weeks later, professionally and elegantly describing my cultivation work. This article attracted wide attention in the industry, and I received several collaboration invitations. As a thank you, I invited Farah to dinner, and she gladly accepted. At the restaurant, our conversation naturally shifted from work to personal life. Encouraged by a glass of red wine, I told her about my divorce experience, without going into many details, but not hiding the pain. "Sounds like you've been through a lot," she said softly. "Everyone has their own way of handling these things. Focusing on what you love helps a great deal," I admitted. "Flowers don't deceive people." After dinner, we began to maintain regular contact, sharing industry information and progress on our work. Sometimes she would send me interesting plant photos, and I would reply with updates on my latest cultivated varieties. Our relationship developed naturally and slowly, without pressure or haste. Meanwhile, news about Elaine and Gareth arrived intermittently. Initially, they really tried to establish a business together. Elaine invested the dividends from her greenhouse shares in Gareth's trading company, but the returns were much lower than Gareth had promised. Gareth began complaining about the poor market environment, demanding more investments to overcome difficulties. On a casual occasion, I saw Elaine at the supermarket. She didn't notice me, and I observed her from behind a shelf. She looked much more haggard, with evident dark circles under her eyes, but still maintained that proud posture. She picked up a moderately priced bottle of red wine, hesitated for a moment, and finally put it back, choosing a cheaper one. I didn't approach to greet her, simply turned and left. Seeing her fall, I didn't feel joy at her misfortune, just a sense of indifference. She had made her choices and was now facing the consequences. A few weeks later, a business partner told me that Garrett's company was facing serious financial problems and several suppliers had suspended their cooperation with him. Apparently, Elaine had begun questioning Garrett's business ability and integrity, but still stood by his side, trying to help him overcome difficulties. This didn't surprise me. Elaine was always a stubborn person who would persevere in her choices even if they were wrong, refusing to admit an error in judgment. My relationship with Farah continued to develop, gradually moving from professional exchanges to personal friendship. We began attending gardening events together on weekends. Sometimes she would come to my house and we'd barbecue in the backyard, discussing various topics. Her laughter was warm and genuine, completely different from Elaine's slightly affected laugh. With Farah, I felt relaxed and comfortable, with no need to pretend or be defensive. One evening, after watching a gardening exhibition together, she asked me, "Do you still think about Elaine?" I was silent for a moment, then answered honestly, "Yes, but it no longer hurts. The memories of betrayal don't disappear, but their power has diminished." She nodded, saying understandingly, "Some scars never completely heal, but we can learn to live with them." That night, when I accompanied her home, we kissed for the first time. It felt so natural, so right, like the beginning of a new chapter. It wasn't rushed passion, but intimacy based on mutual understanding and respect. 3 months later, at an industry fair, I unexpectedly came face to face with Gareth. He looked much more haggard than the last time I saw him. His suit no longer fit well, and the confident gleam in his eyes had dimmed. He was first surprised, then nodded awkwardly. "Reed," he said softly, with a tone of embarrassment in his voice, "long time no see." I just nodded coldly, not responding to his greeting. I didn't want any communication with this man who had once destroyed my marriage. He seemed to want to say something, but finally just sighed and turned away. Watching his lonely figure walk away, I didn't feel the expected satisfaction, just a strange emptiness. The taste of revenge was far from as sweet as I had imagined. Back home, I called Farah to tell her about this chance encounter. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't feel anything special," I replied honestly. "I just feel that things from the past have finally really become the past." Shortly after this encounter, I heard from industry friends that Garrett's company had officially gone bankrupt and he himself was being sued by several investors for alleged fraud. Elaine had to sell part of her greenhouse shares to pay her joint debts in Garrett's company. Even so, her financial situation remained precarious. The relationship between Elaine and Gareth also came to an end amid this financial disaster. It was said that their arguments were increasingly intense, until finally Elaine discovered that Gareth had been concealing the true financial situation of the company and had even misappropriated part of the funds she had invested for his personal consumption. When she demanded more explanations, Gareth simply disappeared, reportedly taking the remaining funds to Southeast Asia. This news arrived while I was having dinner with Farah in my backyard. After hearing it, she asked me, "How do you feel about it?" "To be honest, I no longer care about their affairs," I replied. "Their choices, their consequences. I've moved on." Farah smiled and took my hand. "That's a healthy attitude. Some people live forever in the anger and pain of the past, but you've chosen to move forward." In the following months, my relationship with Farah grew more intimate. She began to participate in some of my cultivation projects, bringing new perspectives and ideas. Together, we created a small blog to share knowledge and experiences about flower cultivation, attracting a group of loyal readers. Meanwhile, my greenhouse business continued to thrive. My new variety of orchids was recognized at an international exhibition, and several large flower distributors signed cooperation agreements with me. These successes not only brought me economic rewards, but, more importantly, helped me regain confidence and purpose. Elaine's life took another direction. She had to leave her job at the Tourism Bureau because her relationship with Gareth and the subsequent financial problems had spread in the small town, damaging her professional credibility. It was said that she had found a job in a retail store, far below her previous position both in prestige and income. One afternoon, a year later, when I was returning with Farah from shopping at a garden center, I saw Elaine in the parking lot. She was standing next to an ordinary mid-sized car, organizing shopping bags in the trunk. Seeing us, she visibly tensed, then quickly turned her head, pretending not to have seen us. Farah sensed my tension and gently squeezed my hand. "Do you want to say hello to her?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "It's not necessary. That relationship is over." We walked directly to our car, without looking in Elaine's direction. But just as we were about to get in, a voice called from behind. "Read." I turned around and saw Elaine standing a few steps away. She looked more haggard than the last time I saw her, but the pride in her eyes persisted. "I heard your new orchid won an award," she said, with forced calm in her voice. "Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied briefly. After an awkward silence, she looked at Farah and then back at me. "You two look very happy." I didn't respond to this comment, just nodded. "I wish you well, Elaine." Having said this, I opened the car door and indicated to Farah to get in. As we drove away from the parking lot, Farah asked, "Do you still hate her?" I reflected for a moment, then shook my head. "No, I don't hate her. Hating requires too much energy, and now I have better things to do." Farah smiled. "That's one of the reasons I like you. You know what deserves your time and energy." 2 years later, Farah and I got married. The wedding was small, only with the closest friends and family. We held the ceremony in a small garden near the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers we had cultivated together. Gareth's name gradually disappeared from the floral industry. It was said that he had restarted a business in Southeast Asia, but due to his previous fraudulent behavior, no one was willing to have significant business dealings with him. His deception finally ruined his own career, a karma that required no external forces. As for Elaine, she finally left the town and moved to another state. According to mutual friends, she found an entry-level job at a tourism company and was slowly rebuilding her life. She lost the international life she once dreamed of, as well as the wealth and status Gareth had promised her. Her pride finally brought her loneliness and economic hardship, all consequences of her own choices. My life with Farah continued to move forward. We managed the greenhouse together, cultivating new varieties of flowers each year. Our blog grew to become a popular gardening resource platform, attracting readers from around the world. Sometimes, in the deep of night, when I reflect on that painful experience, I no longer feel anger or hatred, just a faint nostalgia. That pain, seen now, turned out to be the necessary path that led me to true happiness. In our backyard, those carefully cultivated flowers bloom every spring, reminding me of what truly matters in life: honesty, trust, and true love. And that voice recorder, long ago I stored it in the deepest drawer, along with the pain of the past, buried but never forgotten. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to meeting you in another story.